It's not about mild to moderate or moderate to severe. It's about understanding, how does ADHD show up in this kid or in this adult? And where does it manifest and how does it manifest? Because you got to learn to manage it no matter how intense it is.
You're listening to Parenting with Impact, the podcast for parents like you, raising complex kids to become capable, independent adults, even in this complicated world. Each episode brings expert insights and real-life strategies to help you parent with confidence, calm, and clarity. Here are your hosts, Elaine and Diane.
Welcome back, everybody, to another conversation in the Parenting with Impact podcast. Today, we're going to get on our soapbox.
Yes. Do we do this very often? I don't think we do.
Really not.
The backstory on this was like, I was on a call with a parent the other day and I got up on my soapbox because the intro to the parent was something like, the doctor told me that my kid only has mild to moderate ADHD. So ... right? It was this sort of, the perspective of the parent was, well, got only a little tiny bit of ADHD. So should I even worry about it? Should I just keep plowing on? What should I do with this kid? And so I want to talk about what it really means to have mild to moderate ADHD, if that even is a thing, and then kind of how to support your kids regardless. Elaine, is what I want to talk about. What about you?
Well, I want to, like, you guys, it's rare that Diane gets
soapboxy
enough to say we got to talk about this, because usually, I'm the one on the soapbox and Diane is trying to mitigate me. So it's fun for me. I want to start by that. The other thing that came up to me as you just were saying it was mild to moderate ADHD. Is that like being a little bit pregnant?
Yes, that's exactly what I thought of, right? So most of you don't know that Elaine and I have similar backgrounds, and we were just doing an interview with somebody and we were talking about pregnancy and everything. But that's exactly what I felt when this parent said, my kid only has mild to moderate ADHD. So wait, let me start with, because I'm on my soapbox, I always want to start a soapbox from a place of non-judgment, right? And so I'm going to downregulate and take a deep breath, because it's frustrating for me as a parent and as a professional to hear this. And I also don't want you as the parents to hear any judgment in this, because I think it's well-meaning professionals who tell us things that we misunderstand or misinterpret or don't know what to do with. So know that I see your heart here.
Right. So there is absolutely no judgment here, and including no judgment of the professionals, because there is a spectrum of ADHD.
Yeah.
And people come in on the mild to moderate ADHD. That would be me.
Mm-hmm.
Diane might be surprised to hear that. Some people would come in on the moderate to...
You can't see that I'm smirking, and those of you on the podcast listening, those of you who are watching can see me smirking.
Some people are moderate to significant ADHD. The way I like to say it to parents is, if you look at the executive function chart that we teach, right? There's 6 areas of executive function that Dr. Tom Brown identified as impacting people with ADHD. If you've got kind of 1 to 3 of those, you're probably mild to moderate. If you've got 3 to 6 of those, if you're impacted in 3 to 6 of those areas, you're probably moderate to significant.
But wait a second, because that's actually not so check me on this, Elaine, because maybe I don't have the right information, but that's actually not the way that the diagnosis process goes, right? So remember back to how ADHD gets diagnosed. It's self-reported, it's teacher-reported, it's parent-reported. So depending on the human that's filling out the form, and how extreme they identify it as, is really going to be what defines where on the spectrum it is. Is that not true, Elaine?
It's a yes and, right?
Okay.
So there are, part of it is, it's a process of elimination diagnosis, as you describe. And so there's an interpretation. Where does it show up? How often does it show up? And how many different aspects of life, right? And how many different areas? So I'm not actually speaking to the diagnosis of it, because the diagnostic process will lead you to identify somewhere on that spectrum of mild to significant. What I'm saying is, for those of us who are experiencing it, one good way to figure out how intense what I'll say to parents is sometimes is, do you have a mild dose of ADHD or do you have a healthy whopping dose of ADHD, right? And so one way we can tell is if we're impacted in all 6 areas of executive function, chances are you've got a pretty significant diagnosis of ADHD. If you're doing okay in some of them, but you're struggling in others, chances are it's mild or moderate.
Well, and I think that that's the piece of it is for me, I want to go back to this sort of, you can't be a little bit pregnant, right?
Right.
And I think I want to kind of throw out the conversation about mild to moderate. And yes, there are people that are impacted in some areas of executive function and not in others. There are some kids who are significantly impacted. I hear this a lot. It's like, my kid doesn't have any problems at school, but we have all kinds of problems at home, or vice versa. The kid has problems at school, but doesn't have problems at home. And so part of the challenge in the diagnostic process is that inconsistency is the
Beast, yeah.
yeah, it's what I mean, that's the biggest challenge of ADHD is that it is inconsistent. And so many of these kids are able to mask with their intellect. And I see this a lot in the school environment, is that they're so, particularly the gifted kids, they're so smart. They overcome, quote unquote, accommodate for the executive function challenges by being super smart. I had a kid who was completely disorganized, but could go into an exam and just get 100 on it because caught everything in class. It's the classic 0 on homework, 100 on the exam. And so
Or
the
vice
kid,
versa.
or vice versa, again, vice versa. Right.
Right.
So I think that for me, the level set is that you can't have a small, it doesn't necessarily matter whether you have a small amount of ADHD or a lot of ADHD. And that language of a mild to moderate diagnosis is potentially a misnomer.
And I'm going to challenge you. Okay? Because I don't disagree. I don't think it's a misnomer. I think the question is, what do you do with the information? I think it's helpful to know if you're impacted in some areas or if you're likely to be impacted in all areas. As a parent, it's really helpful to know if your kid's got a really whopping dose of ADHD, it's really calling your attention. And I am not by any means saying that if it's a mild to moderate doesn't mean it doesn't need your attention. In fact, it absolutely does. And it will likely be easier to get your head around it, learn to manage it, and help them be successful with it. I think what's important for parents is to understand, is to shift expectations, is to be able to set reasonable expectations. If I've got a whopping dose of ADHD, medication may help reduce the symptoms. It's not going to organize the backpack in any circumstance, but it's going to be easier. Chances are it's going to take a little less intervention or a little less time or a little less intensity over time, depending on how it shows up. And so it's not about mild to moderate or moderate to severe. It's about understanding, how does ADHD show up in this kid or in this adult? And where does it manifest and how does it manifest? Because you got to learn to manage it no matter how intense it is. Is that fair?
Well, and I guess I feel like we're kind of saying the same thing, because ultimately you cannot use the language of the mild to moderate or moderate to severe as an indicator of what interventions or support are ultimately and actually needed for the kids. And so I think that that's, what I don't want parents to hear is like, oh, my kid's only got a little bit of ADHD, so maybe I can just let them tough it out and they should be able to do better in school. Or my kid has significant ADHD. Oh my gosh, they're never going to make it. I mean, it's this sort of, I want us to not use the language of this. It's a spectrum challenge. It's subjective diagnosis. And what you're ultimately saying, Elaine, is that every kid is different and you want to make sure you're really clear on what your kid's challenges are and that you're accommodating or advocating for that kid based on where they are. And we can put a link into the episode that we did a couple ago about accommodating versus.
Yes.
Yes.
I can't remember the word, accommodations versus remediation.
Remediation, yeah.
Yeah. So I agree with you. I think what I'm reacting to a little bit is I'm stepping in as an adult with neurodiversity.
Yeah.
And the more I understand the better. Here's an implication of how the mild to moderate impacted me. Okay. I spent a lot of years doubting myself and doubting the diagnosis and wondering, did I really have it or not? Did I really need this support or not? Did I really need this help or not? Was I just making excuses? Was I just lazy? Was I just like, so where the problem comes when we don't treat the diagnosis, no matter how moderate or severe it is if we don't give kids an explanation, or adults an explanation for what we're dealing with, what we make up is a whole lot worse. And what we make up is that we're lazy, crazy, or stupid. And I went through 40 years of life thinking I was actually stupid and I was just fooling everybody.
Yeah.
And then after I was diagnosed, I spent another 10 years thinking, well, maybe I'm just lazy. And if I just tried harder, I wouldn't need this support. I wouldn't need this medication. And that was with a lot of knowledge. I still had that feeling.
Yeah.
So I think when I join you on your soapbox,
yeah.
right, the message I think that's so important is to say that there's already so much stigma out there around this diagnosis that we need to understand it well enough to learn to manage it. No matter how mild, moderate, or severe it is, it's still got to be managed. And if we somehow justify that we don't really need to do anything about it because it's mild, we're actually setting people up for a disadvantage and we're not setting them up for success. Is that fair?
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. So let's take a quick break and then come back.
Do you recognize current ADHD interventions fall short? At Dig Coaching, we have developed a new field of engineering and a new ADHD intervention called cognitive ergonomics from the inside out. To learn more, go to digcoaching.com/impact.
So,
welcome back, buddy.
We've been talking about the spectrum of ADHD and mild to severe and kind of the importance of the labels that go along with it. And I want to take us back to the fact that saying that you have mild ADHD is like saying you're a little bit pregnant. And the fact that even if there's just a little smidge, I think about myself as a non-neurospicy human who has executive function challenges in moments. And if in those moments where I have executive function challenges, I go into the living room and I can't have any idea why I'm there. And it's because I'm having a stressed out day. And I'm like, what did I do? What did I forget? And if I go, oh, wow, I'm such a loser. How did I forget? Instead of going, oh, I'm having an executive function moment because I'm stressed and overwhelmed, right? This is sort of,
right.
So the point is that the challenges are real in the moment, and we don't want to use it as an excuse not to support it. And as you were saying, Elaine, the important piece of it is that these kids and us as adults are going to create stories about why things are hard if we don't actually help them to understand that it is hard, period.
And I think this just in as I was listening to you is that it can get better over time as we learn to manage it, or it can actually get worse, right? Undiagnosed and or untreated ADHD becomes all kinds of other complicating factors as we move into adulthood. It can become what's underlying addiction.
Mm-hmm.
It can become what's underlying underperformance or poor challenges with job performance.
It can lead to anxiety, depression, relationship challenges, eating disorders, other physical health issues. Like there is so much research now on what happens when ADHD is not identified and treated. And it has this negative cascading impact on all kinds of life circumstances. And so part of, I think, what we're calling for is to say, if it's mild, let's keep it that way, right? If it's moderate, let's keep it that way. Let's manage it so it doesn't become, what's that expression, the horse out of the barn, right? If it doesn't get ahead, it doesn't take off, because it will snowball on us as adults if we don't understand it well enough to manage it. Well, and so it was not just snowball as adults, but what I notice, and I'm guessing you see the same thing, Elaine, is that these kids hit the wall at some point, right?
Yes.
Just sort of, I had a parent of a third grader who's like, oh my gosh, my kid is hitting the wall. I had a parent of a sixth grader last week. And it's like, they did fine in elementary school. Now all of a sudden they're struggling. The kid who's going into high school, the kid who's going into college or postgraduate, it's a sort of, it's not always that linear, but at some point the challenges become difficult. And then if they don't understand, why am I having a hard time? I haven't ever had a hard time before. That's where the stories tend to creep in and the misinformation tends to creep in, because I did fine in elementary school. Now fifth grade is hard. This parent had a kid who literally was having meltdowns because they cried for 3 days because they'd done so well. And all of a sudden the middle school was really hard and this parent, it was great. The kid was able to articulate the 20 things that were different and hard for them in middle school. And so it's like, okay, great. We understand. It's completely different. It makes sense that it's going to be harder. Let's help you figure out how to accommodate yourself in a more challenging environment instead of assuming you were really smart last year, now you're stupid.
Right. Which is what it feels like from this lens.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
Like it really does. And so I think the message here is it doesn't matter what the diagnosis is, it needs to be treated. Untreated, it can have all kinds of negative consequences. And treatment is not just medication, right? So a lot of people will say, well, I don't have emotional issues with it. It's only attention. And so I'm going to give him medication. That's all I need. Or some people will say, I don't want to ever do medication. So I'm only going to try these other things. And the thing about managing ADHD is that the brain is involved. And so you have to find a way to activate the brain. And what Diane and I have been saying for 15 years is, I don't care if you do it with medication, meditation, nutrition, exercise, doesn't matter what you do, you have to engage the brain in order to manage the ADD, right?
Yeah.
And then you've got to manage the ADHD. You've got to understand what the obstacles are, how it's showing up, and find the path to manage it.
Well, and as you say that, I'm like, so what does it mean to understand the patterns that are showing up? It's about understanding executive function. It's about understanding that what's going on. My kid is having a hard time turning in their homework. My kid is having a hard time following through when they say that they'll get off their computer and then they never get off. It's a sort of just taking that minute. And this is part of what we talk a lot about in our programming, to say, okay, it's not just that my kid is having a hard time getting off the computer. What's really going on from an executive function perspective underneath that? And how do I support them knowing that they have strengths and challenges of executive function so that they can be successful in getting off the computer longer term? Again, it's a sort of, this isn't just about taking care of the situation today. Ultimately, what we'd want to do is raise kids with a lot of awareness of what's going on in their brain and their body so that they know how to support themselves long term once they're out of our purview someday.
Well, and that's where it becomes so important to help them understand themselves well enough.
Yeah.
Right. And to approach that, helping them understand themselves without shame, without feeling blame, without judgment. We have to pull our own judgment and stigmas out of it so that we can meet them where they are. That's why we do so much work with parents, not the kids themselves, because, we show up to parenting with all these scripts and all these stories and all these expectations from our own life up until now. And we really got to figure out and do the work to get ourselves out of the way so that we can be present to them and what they need.
Well, even as I'm listening to you talk about we have to help them understand. I mean, that's another sticky spot, because it's like
fixing them, right?
Because how many times parents are like, I'm trying to explain to my kid what executive functions problems they have, and they won't listen to me, right? It's just sort of, okay, so we've got to go backwards and go, okay, what's really going, yes, your kid has executive function challenges. Are they ready to hear about it? Are they in a space where they can hear about it? How do I make it safe for them to hear about it? All the things.
Or what's a coach approach to help them discover it without you being the one directing it, right? A lot of it is about how do you create conversations around these things so that they're not getting defensive and we're not, wagging our fingers.
Well, because understanding your ADHD becomes one more thing on our checklist for our kids. Get your homework done, clean your room, and understand your ADHD, right? It's this sort of, again, it may be hard. It may take a bit to get their attention and their buy-in to do
I
that.
have to tell you, with a lot of parents, I encourage them for a while at least to stop using the word ADHD, stop
Mm.
using the term, because it becomes weaponized.
Mm.
And it doesn't help them and it doesn't help you. So if you shift from, well, because of your ADHD, da 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 da, to it looks like you're having a hard time with,
Yeah.
it looks like you're struggling with, would you like some help with? And you're focusing on what's in it for them instead of telling them what's wrong with them.
Yeah. Yeah. And some kids need to understand that it is a diagnosis and that it is legit something different and not just you're struggling with, so that they don't think that they should just try harder. And so part of this navigating
But that may
when
not
to
be the
call it
first.
what that may not what?
May not be the first step. Like there was a point of time I remember with one of my kids where I stopped using the term for a while because we were in this battle about, well, it's different for me. It's like, okay. And so it wasn't helping the dynamic.
Yeah.
For me to keep saying, but you've got to understand. And so I had to pause and manage myself and get out of the way so that he could figure out what was important to him, right?
Well, and that's the
We're
piece.
able to
It's like,
come back later and talk about it in the context of ADHD.
well, and I think that that's the piece is like meeting your kid where they are. I mean, going back to the very beginning, it's this sort of what are the challenges that they have? What's their perspective of the challenge? And what's going to make it easier for them to understand and accept help and see themselves as not broken, but see themselves as needing support in a way that other people might not. I mean, there's this nuance and flavor to every kid that might be different, which is why it's so important for us to kind of go, okay, what is going on and how do I want to help my kid, and not expect that there's going to be a playbook that says, well, when this happens, do this, when this happens, do that.
Wouldn't that be
Which is
nice?
why I love the coach approach. I wish there was a playbook sometimes.
Sometimes. Well, I think this is a playbook. It's just a different kind of playbook. It's like, here are a bunch of different scenarios you can use for different circumstances. Try this. Experiment. Okay. I'm curious, before you and I ask them, what are you taking away from this conversation?
No, I think, I mean, I'm, whenever I'm on this soapbox, I always want to go back and go, okay, wait, what is it about this that's got me charged so much? And I think that that's the reflection is this is a hard conversation, and parents often are looking for the easy way out because it feels so hard. And I want to say it doesn't always have to feel hard, and we've got to meet our kids where we are, where they
Where-
are, where they
yeah.
are. What about you?
I think it's important to remember the snowball effect of
Mhm.
untreated ADHD, like always. And I'm constantly reminded of how many years that I questioned my own ADHD because I wasn't so severe. And so I questioned whether I needed support or assistance or help or accommodations or whatever, and how unfair that was to myself, right? That I was judging myself as not ADHD enough to need help. And so to anybody out there who's got anybody in your world with a diagnosis of ADHD, my invitation, my plead is to take it seriously, to hold it lightly, right? It's not, I mean, there's a lot of joy that comes
Take it seriously and hold it lightly.
Right.
Lightly. I love that piece of
that
it.
that because they're both true, right?
Yeah.
It's a sand of it. I wouldn't trade being ADHD and having an ADHD brain, and it's complicated sometimes, especially when I have a family of us, right? So so take it seriously, get support, and hold it lightly, and try not to freak out because it's once you understand it, you can begin to learn to manage it, and it's kind of fun.
Well, and we haven't said this, but the reminder is that even if your kid has just a little bit of ADHD, recommended treatment is still get training for you as the parent.
Yeah.
So we're glad that you're here.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Oh, wait. So what are you taking away? Those of you listening, thank you for being here. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for doing the work for yourself and for your families. What's your insight from this? What's your awareness?
What do you want to take away?
And how do you want to bring it into your life? How might you apply that insight in the coming weeks?
And as always, thanks for what you're doing for yourself and for your kids. At the end of the day, you really do make a difference.
You've been listening to the Parenting with Impact podcast with Elaine and Diane. For more information on the Impact Parents community or to join Sanity School for Parents, please visit impactparents.com. If you like what you've heard, please share this podcast with friends who need similar guidance and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.